I'm Ava Calder, 32, and the face no one sees behind Vantage Systems, an enterprise I built out of stubbornness, sleepless nights, and an unshakable belief that security should feel invisible but be unbreakable. On paper, we're a quiet constellation of products and subsidiaries. In my parents' house, I'm still the middle child who hasn't settled down. The Calder rulebook was simple, prestigious schools, recognizable job titles, and a life that photographs well on holiday cards. My sister Bianca learned it in kindergarten and never colored outside the lines. Ivy League, MBA, a corner office at Helios Industries. My brother Noah, patient and dutiful, followed the template into accounting and climbed to junior partner by 28. When neighbors ask, my parents' voices warm with easy pride. When the conversation swings to me, the temperature drops a few degrees, like someone opened a window in January. I didn't start with a manifesto. I started by opening every device we owned. While other kids fed cartridges into game consoles, I wanted the schematics and the firmware. I taught myself to read error logs the way some people read horoscopes. At school, the teachers called it initiative. At home, it was a phase. Ava colleges want well-rounded applicants, my mother would say, as if soldering irons were moral failings. My father wanted me to finish what you start, which is how he interpreted my habit of jumping from a robotics build to a new stack for a web app. To me, it was iteration. To him, it was impatience. I tried to be bilingual, fluent in my parents' language of respectability and my own dialect of prototypes and pull requests. I enrolled in business school to make peace at the dinner table. By sophomore year, my side project, an authentication layer that made multi-cloud deployments behave like a single organism, was getting traction. A Fortune 500 security lead replied to my cold email with a calendar link and 3 follow-ups. I stopped sleeping and started negotiating. When I left school to pursue the product, the Calder living room felt like a courtroom. My father framed it as a verdict: "You are walking away from stability." My mother added the sentence, "No benefits, no plan." Bianca, home for the weekend and radiant with promotion, wore that measured smile that says, "I'm sorry you don't know better." I told myself it didn't matter. Build first, explain later. For a while, I played along, showed up for holidays, nodded through lectures about real jobs, and returned to my apartment where the whiteboard walls were the only ones listening. Then came a Thanksgiving, when I tried to share news, a seed round that would keep the servers and my optimism running. Bianca's toast to her new senior title swallowed the rest of my sentence. Everyone raised their glasses. I folded mine into a decision. I stopped performing for an audience that didn't want the show. I kept my life in 2 columns. In one column, Ava, the cautious middle child who rents a small place, drives an old Corolla, doesn't mind helping in the kitchen, and is still figuring it out. In the other, the founder who filed patents, signed a handful of carefully structured acquisitions, opened offices quietly in 3 cities, and let trusted executives present while I watched the market and moved the pieces. It wasn't only strategy, it was self-preservation. Vantage Systems grew by telling the truth that most enterprises don't want to hear. You can't bolt safety on after go live. We built controls that traveled with data policy engines that were boring in the best way and tooling that made compliance look like autocomplete. Our clients were cautious publicly and grateful privately. The company's valuation climbed, then vaulted. I kept my name out of the articles and my head down. One irony, the universe couldn't resist the best fit for our hardware ambitions, was Helios Industries, the very company that rewarded Bianca's careful obedience. Their devices were rugged, their supply chain disciplined, their marketing polished. What they needed was our spine of security and orchestration. The term sheet crossed my desk exactly 1 week before Christmas. The text from my parents arrived the way it always does. Christmas Eve dinner at 6. Let us know if you're coming. Logistics, not invitation. I said yes because habit is a powerful thing and because I wanted one last look at the family that had never seen me. I drove the old Corolla from my garage downtown to the shingled house in the suburbs, camouflage I no longer needed but still wore. The driveway was crowded with a gleaming import I didn't recognize. Inside, I discovered the owner. Bianca floated in, wearing a red dress that looked like it had its own calendar invite. Beside her stood Graham Porter, the Helios SVP, who has a talent for saying very little in meetings and getting credit for the silence. "Graham, this is my sister Bianca," said, which is how I learned we'd never met. "Nice to finally meet you," he offered, shaking my hand in the doorway. My mother's voice carried from the kitchen. "Ava, could you help with vegetables?" The choreography was familiar. The guest room would be turned down. The men would gather near the fire. I would slice and stir and try not to bleed into the marinade. From the sink, I could hear my father warming to his favorite topic, other people's success. "How's the view from your corner office?" "Graham?" he asked, half joking, wholly impressed. "Good," Graham said. "Though the rumor is the new leadership has an even better one." "New leadership," my father echoed. "Helios has a mysterious CEO to please now," Graham said lightly. "All decisions, no photo." A smile tugged at me where he couldn't see. If anonymity were a product, I would have shipped version 3 by now. "Ava, how's your website thing?" my father called toward the kitchen, years later than the question deserved. "It's coming together," I said, which was true in ways he couldn't imagine. "There's an entry-level opening on my team next quarter," Bianca added, stepping in to refill her glass. "Real experience could help you figure out what you want." "I appreciate it," I said and meant only the first 3 words. While the roast rested and the wine did what wine does to old habits, my phone hummed with a message from Grace on the finance side: retention packages finalized for key Helios leaders, documents primed for distribution after the holiday. I slid the screen into my pocket. The plan was 9 a.m. tomorrow. Civilized timing for a not very civilized industry. By dessert, the seating chart explained itself. Graham at one head of the table, my father at the other. Bianca to Graham's right, my mother at his left. Noah somewhere warm. I was a bookmark at the far end, close to the sideboard, and far from the conversation. It would have been comical if it weren't so tidy. When the plates cleared, my parents conferred about sleeping arrangements, voices hushed but not enough. The guest room, of course, for Graham. Bianca would have her old room with the good lamp. Noah's space had been left as a museum to sports posters and a model car collection. The den is full of wrapping, my mother said, and the sofa is short. Then the afterthought. The garage is empty. It's just one night. I stood very still in the hallway, where the furnace clicks have always sounded like held breath. In another life, that sentence would have broken me open. In this one, it rearranged the air around me and clarified what tomorrow needed to be. They set up a narrow cot beside paint cans and a silent treadmill. The air bit with metal cold. A small plug-in heater blinked a red light that felt less like warmth and more like apology. I set my bag down and opened my laptop, because the truth of my life is that wherever there's a surface and a signal, I am at work. Notifications climbed the corner of the screen. Legal HR, a short note from James confirming the brief I'd review before the announcement. I stared at the ceiling joists and listened to the house settle, my mother moving dishes, my father's laugh ricocheting off the mantel, Bianca's careful flattery spiraling toward Graham's approval. 5 years of silence have a way of sanding your anger down to grain. Even so, my hands shook a little. Not with humiliation exactly, with clarity. Tomorrow at 9, every inbox at Helios would learn a new word: Vantage. Eventually, they would learn my name too. Tonight, the Calder family would keep its seating chart, its story about the daughter who never quite launched. I pulled the thin blanket over my coat and let the laptop's pale rectangle of light erase the garage's edges. I didn't need the guest room to sleep. I needed the morning. I take the executive brief from the den with wrapping paper piled against the sofa like a snowbank. The house is quiet in that tense holiday way, lights low dishes stacked the air holding its breath. On screen, the heads of Helios appear in neat squares that don't know they're about to become a single picture. I give them the version of myself that ships products and lands planes, calm specific short on adjectives. Good evening, I begin. I'm Ava Calder, founder and CEO of Vantage Systems. I know the timing is unusual. The goal tonight is stability. We'll meet again in the morning for broader comms. For now, no mass layoffs. Compensation-honored retention targeted where continuity matters most. We're moving security from the perimeter to the center of the stack. That's the thesis. Questions follow as they should. A supply chain lead asks about vendor continuity. A hardware VP asks about roadmap collisions. A product director wants to know whether our orchestration layer is opinionated or permissive. I answer one by one, not because I enjoy the spotlight, but because it's the fastest way to cool a room. 10 minutes in the temperature drops from alarm to focused concern. 15 minutes in the conversation becomes a plan. 30 minutes in, I set expectations. Sleep. Your teams need you rested tomorrow. When the call ends, the den looks shabbier than it did. The gifts are still there, but the paper has gone dull. I feel something similar happening under my skin, the old performance shedding a truer outline underneath. I step into the hallway and nearly collide with my father. Thomas has that dazed look people get when the map in their hands stops matching the streets under their feet. He gestures toward the living room as if furniture could act as witnesses. You just did a merger call, he says. Acquisition, I correct gently, but yes. He nods, trying the word on. Acquisition. My mother appears behind him, fingers still pruny from dishes, eyes shining with the kind of overwhelm that teeters between pride and panic. Do you need a quieter space? She asks, as if the house might earn forgiveness by handing me a better acoustics profile. I'm finished for tonight, I say. Thank you. They move aside to let me pass small choreography, large meaning. I gather sheets from the linen closet and make up the den myself. In another life, I might have taken the guest room simply to make a point. In this one, I'm tired of points. I want rest that isn't a weapon. Sleep comes in patches. I dream of dashboards that become advent calendars, each notification opening to a memory. A soldering iron on a borrowed desk, a coffee-stained pitch deck. Bianca's red dress flickering at the edge of a slide, the word Vantage printed on a box. Someone will open and not think about because the best infrastructure is invisible. I wake before the house. It's a habit I never had to defend to a manager. In the kitchen, Thomas stands at the window with a mug like he is reading clouds for a forecast. He turns startled, then awkwardly gallant. Coffee, yes please. I take a seat at the same table where I once did geometry proofs while my mother timed lasagnas. He sets the cup down as if it might break the spell. Did you sleep? Better than I would have in the garage, I say, and immediately soften the line with a half smile. He flinches anyway. Good. Some truths should land. He pulls out the chair across from me. I'm sorry, he says. The words are small, but they're the right size. Anything bigger would tip into theater. It was thoughtless. It was ordinary, I say. That's the problem. We sit in an unfamiliar silence, the kind that doesn't rush to fill itself with weather or chores. He looks older than he did last night. Not weak exactly, just human. Your mother and I thought we were encouraging you, he says. Now I'm replaying all the ways it was discouragement dressed up in good advice. You weren't wrong about stability, I answer. You were wrong about where it comes from. The clock over the stove advances by an honest minute. Footsteps overhead, a door. The day's plot unspools on its own. By 8:30, the house is a choreography of small overcompensations. Marian fries French toast with the concentration of a heart surgeon. She sets out fruit as if color could repair time. Bianca checks her phone, checks it again, and then sets it face down like a vow. Noah watches the four of us as if trying to draw the family diagram with fewer arrows. At 9, the emails go out. Vantage to Helios. Helios to Helios. Then reporters and analysts and that subset of the internet that treats corporate news as a crossword puzzle. Bianca's phone chimes first, then Noah's, then my father's tablet pings like a doorbell. Bianca reads swallows. It's official, she says. Welcome emails. Town hall after the holiday. The language is... She looks up at me. Calm. Drafted by Dana. Edited by me, I say. We try to sound the way we intend to be. Thomas rubs his jaw. Calder, he says, squinting at the screen. You kept our name on things. I smile. I don't sign contracts without it. A relief I didn't anticipate loosens something in his shoulders. He nods at no one in particular as if confirming the weather. We eat breakfast with a new care. No one avoids the past. No one weaponizes it either. Noah asks about integration timelines. Bianca asks practical questions about reporting lines, and I admire how quickly her brain pivots from fear to workflow. Marian asks if I'll need more office space downtown, as if she could solve macroeconomics with a casserole. After the plates are cleared, we sit around the tree because ritual is useful even in a house that doesn't believe it is. The gifts tell a story we didn't plan to publish. My pile, small and generic, is good-natured. In its wrongness, a scarf in a neutral that would wash me out bath salts that smell like the idea of lavender, a bestseller, I have no interest in reading. I open them with sincere gratitude because intention matters and also because collision avoidance is a leadership skill. The gifts I brought feel treacherous now, like evidence that I've been paying attention while everyone else skimmed. But truth doesn't wait for a better setting. For Thomas, a first edition of the economics text, he quoted to me in high school when he wanted me to think of markets as elegant machines instead of messy kitchens. For Marian, a small jewelry box carved by a craftsperson she admired in a magazine and never treated herself to. For Noah, the watch he'd added and removed from an online cart 6 times. For Bianca, a leather portfolio embossed with her initials, lined with the Japanese paper she had rhapsodized about after a conference but never found again. They open them, and in the way their faces change, I see that the old map might still be updated. How did you know, Marian asks, touching the jewelry box with a care that suggests it contains more than a necklace? I listen, I say, even when I don't look like I'm listening. Thomas clears his throat. We got you something else, he says, glancing at my mother the way conspirators do when the plan involves hope. He hands me a simple frame. Inside is a printout of a magazine profile about Vantage, the one with the shadowed founder who declined photographs. The article's headline is circled as if that could summon me. We thought you might sign it, he says, nervous, half joking, half serious. It's a start, I say, and mean it. The rest of the day is small repairs. We talk about Vantage in terms my parents can understand without dumbing it down. We talk about Helios in terms Bianca can stand without feeling like she's losing ground. We talk about Noah's idea for a consultancy that specializes in early-stage compliance and runway math for founders who would rather patch the kernel than build a budget. I like the idea and tell him why, because something should bridge people like the 20-year-old I was to people like the 32-year-old I am. In the afternoon, Bianca asks if we can step outside. The air is bright and mean. We stand on the porch, breath visible. Silence between us as necessary as it is awkward. I'm not going to pretend I wouldn't have preferred to learn about this. Some other way, she says. Her voice is wry and raw at once. But I'm not going to pretend I'm not impressed either. I'm not going to pretend I didn't enjoy your face for a second. I admit, then shake my head. That sounded pettier than I feel. It didn't, she says, and then softer. You've built something serious, and I've spent years being serious about things that looked serious. You're good at what you do, I say. Your metrics say so. Your team says so. I'm not taking that away. You are changing who I report to, she says with a quick grimace that acknowledges both the sting and the logic. Yes, I say. You'll have a director who isn't your sister. That's not punishment. It's a firewall. We owe your team that clarity. She exhales. Thank you. For not firing you, I tease. For not turning this into theater, she says. For letting it be work. We go back inside. The rest of the evening is unremarkable in the most remarkable way. We help our mother package leftovers with an efficiency that would make a logistics team weep. Thomas insists on loading the dishwasher because it's his one reliable skill in a kitchen. Noah leaves with a Tupperware that promises to return in a different shape as Tupperware does. I sleep in the den again this time without the edge of battle insomnia. In the morning, I drive back to the city park, the Corolla in a garage that still feels like a disguise, and take the elevator to the office where anonymity used to be policy. The day unfolds like a well-rehearsed launch. We brief staff, we post and then ignore the internet. We send the press kit to people who will pretend the adjectives are their own. Graham calls to report that his team is steadier than expected. Bianca emails a list of smart questions that would have earned her a raise from any CEO who wasn't her sister. James drops by my office door, a paper cup of coffee held like a medal. You did that well, he says. I answer with the quiet that leaders forget to take a nod. 6 months later, the lake is a sheet of hammered light, and the deck at my house is finally the place I promised myself I would one day be calm on. There's citronella in a jar and a table that looks like it was designed to show off salads. This is the kind of space that used to make me suspicious. Now, it makes me think of work done well enough that rest doesn't feel like abandoning anything. My parents arrive together as they do with a bottle of champagne and a magazine Thomas waves like a flag. You made another cover, he says, both proud and bewildered the way parents get when the horizon keeps moving and their kid keeps walking off it and on to the next one. Marion hugs me with more certainty than she used to deploy. Tour later, she says, assigning herself to my house as if it were a project she could manage. Bianca comes last, and not because she's late. She is lighter around the mouth in a way I recognize from people whose shoulders finally trust their load. The integration has used every part of her craft positioning, listening, translating features to benefits and fear to vocabulary. We swap quick work notes while we slice peaches. The focus groups finally hear it, she says. When we lead with policy as product, they stop assuming we mean punishment. That's the trick, I say. Security that feels like help. Graham sends his regrets politely. He is in Singapore, and the internet isn't magic enough yet to make jet lag pretty. Noah arrives with a laptop and a deck. I asked to see because I like being the kind of sister who asks about decks. He wants to open a consultancy that sits between founders and numbers, that translates dreams into P&L, and doesn't punish people for not knowing what EBITDA is until they need to. I mark up the slides with a generosity I never craved but now enjoy. Charge more, I tell him. You're solving panic, and that's priceless. We eat outside because we can. The conversation feels like a new operating system running on old hardware without crashing. My parents are careful without being brittle. Bianca is confident without claiming space that isn't hers. I am present without needing to audit the room for traps. Later, over the soft clink of dishes that won't be Instagrammed, Thomas clears his throat. He has learned that in our family, this is the signal for a real thing, not a dad thing. I've been thinking about what you said at Christmas. He begins looking at me. And I suspect at the past, about wanting to be seen for who you are, not what you've achieved. I realized I wanted the same thing. I dressed up my need for approval as standards. I think I pushed that recipe onto you all because it fed me for a long time. I ate it too, Bianca says. It works until it doesn't. Marion smiles sadly. I sold it, she says, like a good marketer without a degree. We laugh gently because laughter is one way to keep the room from tipping over. Noah taps the table. We can change the menu, he says. We do in ways that aren't dramatic enough for novels, but matter to the people who live them. My parents start calling on Sundays without wondering if it makes them look needy. Bianca and I establish a rule: if a conversation is about work, we label it. If it's about being sisters, we put the laptops away. Noah texts me, drafts at disrespectful hours because I told him I prefer ideas when they're still warm. I reply in the mornings with calm notes because he prefers criticism when he's had coffee. At Vantage, we codify policies that would have made my younger self feel less like a mistake. We make room for non-linear careers, and we deliver benefits that respect the fact that the body is not a machine and a mind is not a slot for productivity. We pilot a mentorship program for people whose families don't know how to cheer for things that can't be photographed yet. The program fills in a day. I take the first 7 mentees myself and try to be the voice on the call I once needed at midnight. Helios integrates faster than skeptics predicted and slower than optimists promised, which is to say, at human speed. We cut products that were beautiful but didn't fit, and we keep teams that make the messy middle easier. Graham proves to be what I suspected: competent political, in the good sense more interested in influence than in credit. He and Bianca learn to spar without bruising. Watching them, I remember that the best work relationships are dances in shoes no one else wants to wear. One Saturday, months after the snow melted from the gutters and the lilacs did their pretty temporary thing, I drive back to the suburbs. It smells like grills and compromise. My parents greet me with the eagerness of hosts who finally believe their home is worth visiting. After coffee, Thomas leads me down the hallway with ceremony. We've been working on something, he says. The door to the garage opens onto a different room. Insulation lines the walls like a winter coat. The floor is warm under my sandals. There's a desk facing the garden, a real chair instead of a folding apology, a bookshelf with space for more than a life. The treadmill is gone to whatever afterlife welcomes furniture with good intentions. We thought you might need a place to work when you visit Marion, says a little shy. On the shelf sits the simple frame with the magazine article signed now next to an unframed photo of me. At 14, holding up a regional coding trophy with a grin and a t-shirt that didn't know it would become a flag. I run my hand along the desk. It's not fancy. It's better than fancy. It's considered. I picture the cot that used to sag in the middle and wonder at the physics of a family that can convert cruelty into care with carpentry and time. It's perfect, I say, and I don't try to make the sentence bigger. Marion fusses with a lamp that doesn't need fussing. Thomas points out the thermostat as if climate control were a password. We sit for a minute in the new room not working, which is a good omen. That night after dinner, simpler than our holiday feasts and warmer, we go through old photo albums that look like they remember more than we do. There's Bianca in a prom dress, holding her sash like a thesis. There's Noah in a baseball uniform that dwarfs him. There I am, squinting at a motherboard on the floor because we had no table big enough for the mess. You were always making, Thomas says, both apology and benediction. Still am, I say. On the drive back to the city, the dusk looks like it has been edited for optimism. My phone buzzes with a text from Bianca. Board loved the security as empathy line. Stole it with attribution. Another from Noah Pilot client signed. Thanks for the brutal notes. a third from my mother, which is still rare enough to make me smile. Send me the dates you're free next month. Your room is ready. She doesn't say which room. She doesn't have to. Back at the office Monday, we ship something that took us 3 years to understand and 6 months to build because that is the ratio I've learned to trust. The headlines are kind but slightly wrong as headlines are. Our customers send fewer emails than usual, which is how I know we gave them what they needed. On a quiet afternoon, I stand at the window and look at the city that thinks it knows me and does not. And I think about Christmas, not the reveal or the emails or the executive call, though those were necessary and loud. I think about the den and the coffee the next morning and the small gifts that were really admissions, and the way a family can learn a new language if you stop translating for them and let them ask for the words. I used to believe that success would make the rest of my life easier. The truth is kinder and less cinematic. Success made me brave enough to make the rest of my life truer. We did not become a perfect family. We became a practiced one. We know how to apologize in the right size. We know when to label a meeting and when to let a conversation be a conversation. We know that a garage can be a wound, and then a room, and then a promise. Late that week, I walk into the mentorship session we run on Fridays. The cohort looks exactly like the future underprepared and overqualified. We talk about product market fit, and then we talk about the market of people who will try to tell them who they are. One of them asks how you know when to tell your parents what you're building. There's no right time, I say. There's a right you. Get there first. Afterward, I sit in my office with the lights off and the city on and write a short list of things I want to remember when the next crisis convinces me I've forgotten everything. Stabilize, understand, optimize, lead with policy as care. Design for the person who will never send a thank you email because nothing went wrong. At the bottom, I add one more line. Call home on Sunday. Ask about the garden. It's not strategic. It's not even interesting. It is, however, the kind of metric that keeps the graph moving in the right direction. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring more journeys and lessons together.